Hi, this is section 4.3. And the notes have a lot of wordy stuff, but I think it'd be easier for this section to just kind of do the problems than it is to have the words out. So we are still solving a system of equations, but now we're going to up it to be three unknowns, three equations versus just two unknowns, two equations. And this first part is trying to tell you this Gauss elimination says you have to have, oops, I'm not on the writer. You have to have the diagonal as ones, the rest zeros, and then this would be numbers here. I'm going to label them the way they do, x1, x2, or x and y. It really, they're the same thing. Or you could start to have a 3 by 3. So that would have, again, the ones down the diagonal, and then you would have zeros this way, and then you would have x1, x2, x3, or x, y, z. So we still start with an equation from words, like like a business setting, because we have a couple word problems in here too. Then we move from regular equations into that augmented matrix, and then we do row operations until it looks like these two. So zeros and ones. That's our goal. There is a specific way we want to do a 3 by 3. Now, what's cool about a 2 by 2 is you could get this zero, then this zero, or vice versa. There's not like an order. You might get lost in your 3 by 3 and make a zero that you worked hard to get become a number. So we have to go a specific order so that we don't make a zero become a number. Now, there are more than one ways. So if you watch somebody else's video, you might learn a different way. This is how I teach it. So I teach you go zero here, zero here, zero here. So zeros this way. Okay. Then you start with this one, this one, this one. So you go like that. So I'll highlight. So let's see. So we're going to go, well, maybe, let me see if I have like, can I write in yellow? Yeah. So we're going to go like this, and I'm going to have an arrow on the end. I don't know if you can see that super well. Then you're going to go like this. And that might be helpful. It might not. And once we start the problems, that we'll see. So that's our goal. If we have, oh my goodness, this one's so wordy. If we have a row of zeros, all zeros, then there is infinitely many solutions. And that's a little bit harder than that because they make you write the equation. So definitely we'll do one of those. And then if you get a row of, oh, I can't write very well here, all zeros, but the last number, you have a no solution. And we learned that in the last section, but I want to make sure we have that written down somewhere. So a row of zeros with a number at the very end means zero equals something, and we can't have that. So let's look at a couple that are already solved to kind of get this idea down. So this first one, so it says determine if the matrix is in the correct form. Is it in what we call reduced row form? It's called reduced row echelon form a lot too. So either way. So reduced row form, this one's not quite right because we want the diagonal to have the ones. So what can we do to make this one be correct? We can switch rows 1 and 2. Okay, so we're going to take row 1 and row 2, and we're going to switch them. That's kind of our symbol for switching those. So you always want to practice stating what you're doing because your teacher's going to require it. Because I don't want to try to add numbers and multiply numbers to figure out what you're doing when you take an exam or a quiz. So like you need to make sure you're showing what you're doing for both of our sake. It helps you see what you're doing, and it for when you like look back as well. So we're going to switch those rows so it becomes 1 0 0 8. And then the top one becomes 0, 1, 0, 2, and the bottom one is 0, 0, 1, 3. And typically it's a dotted line. That they do a straight line. Either way, which is probably the publisher, what was easier to write on notes. So, okay, questions on that? Oh, wait, you can't ask me. Hard to ask me questions on a video. All right, next one. What's wrong? The 5 in the middle isn't a 1. How can I make that 5 a 1? Well, I can take that row, row 2, and I can divide it by 5. When I divide it by 5, that 5 will become a 1. So we're going to do that. So row 1 stayed the same, and row 2 is going to become 0 divided by 5 is still 0. 5 divided by 5 is 1, 0, 1, and then the last row is 1, 0, 0, 1, 2. So we just had to divide by 5, and now it's in reduced row echelon form, or reduced row form. Okay, and then this would represent x1, x2, x3, x, y, z. Either way, those are our answers, because we think of this as row x1, x2, x3, or x, y, z, either way, and we think, okay, it equals a 1 at 3. That's really what we're at. And this one is none, none, right? And then this one is none, 1 at 1. And then this one, it's 1 at 2. So you could kind of think of it as, let me put this in red. This is like x3 times x3, right? You can think of it like this with the x2, x2, x2. We just, when we write a matrix, we don't write those in. That's really what it's saying is 1 times x1 times 0 x2s times 0 x3s is equal to 3. Well, then we know the 0 parts are going away. And the first one is x1 and it equals that number. Okay, but we don't write those in because we want to just deal with the numbers. Okay, what is wrong with 3? Well, we have a row of zeros. I don't even care that the bottom row should be in the middle. Really, this row should be here. But really, if we have a row of all zeros, we have many solutions. Infinitely many solutions. So we would write that based off of what we see. So how do I have it written down? I was trying to remember what variable they make you write. Is it y? Sorry, I can't remember what variable they like you to write it with. Is it t? Here we go. This will help me. So they say, I'm going to write it in terms of x1, x2, x3, but I want to write this one out. This is basically x1 equals -5. Okay, and we get that from this top row. And that bottom row is x2 equals -4. Gosh, and this one doesn't have, yeah, I'll have to show it on a different problem. That is what it shows, but so yeah, we'll just show it on a different problem. I was trying to be proactive, but I'll show it on the other problem that I have later. Okay, so problem 4, can't have this 4 here. I would need to do row operations to make that a 0. Okay. For this one, I would, if I wanted to write this out, I could take -4 times row 2, and that would make this a -4. And then I would add it to row 3, and then I would replace it on row 3. That would be the row operation I can do in order to get that 4 to become a 0. And I want to use these two because I need these two to add to 0. If I use this one, and well, I can't anyway because it's a 0, but if this was a 1 and I wanted to times this by -4 to go here, when I combine it, I will get a number here. You have to do it in specific orders so that you have to have 2 zeros in certain spots in order for it to not add back to a number instead of adding to 0. Okay, last one is in the right form. It is in what we call RR form, reduced row form. So yes, this one is perfect. All right, let's do one. I'm only going to do a couple examples, and then we'll go from there. So problem 6 here has uh, just a just two variables, right? An x and a y, or an x1 and x2. And we could have had this could have come from words. It could have come from an equation, and we wrote it in this matrix form. Either way. So when we go to write this, we're going to write it as just the numbers: 2, -1, 4, 3, 2, 6. Okay, and we like dotted or a solid line there. Then from there, we have to think about where we want zeros. I would like a 0 to be here, right? And I would like a 0 to be here. That's my goal. And then the other two, we'll worry about them being ones at the very last step. We don't care if they're ones until the end. And then we can divide each row to make each of those letters or numbers, excuse me, be a 1. So let's start with the easiest one would be to times by a 2 here. And then I could get a 0 here. So that's what I'm going to do first. I could have done the other two. I would have had to do 1 by 3, 1 by -2, or something like that. So I'm going to take 2 and I'm going to multiply it by row 1. Okay. Then I'm going to add it to row 2. And I would like to replace it. Well, that's going to put a 0 where the -1 is, right? Or so I would like to replace that on row 1 because I would like the 0 to be here, not here, right? So I'm making a 0 in this row. I want the 0 to be here. So I'm going to replace it on this row. So let's do that step. So 2 times row 1, that's going to become a 4. 4 plus 3 is going to make 7. So now I have a 7. Okay. 2 times -1 is going to make a -2, plus 2, right, is going to make a 0, which was our whole point. Then 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 16 is going to give me 14, right? 8 plus 6. Yeah. Okay. And then the bottom row stays the same. Okay, just like that. So I just changed the row that I have listed at the end. Okay. We're going to ignore this problem because I need a lot more space when I write with an Apple Pen. So then from here, I need another 0. Well, okay. I look at this and I can multiply this one by 3 and this one by 7. But do you see that this one, I could easily divide this and this by 7 just to make the numbers easier? I can. So I'm gonna take row 1 and divide it by 7 just to make it easier. So, and then I have the 1, 0, 2, 3, 2, 6. So I already have the 1, and that will make the next step easier. So you don't have to do the ones till the end, but it made this one easier. So now I can just multiply row 1 by -3. And then I'm going to add it to row 2, and I would like to replace it on row 2. So I would like this to be a -3, add these, get a 0 here, because our goal is always ones, zeros, ones, zeros. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to put that there. So -3 times here plus here is 0, replacing that on row 2. Okay, -3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. And 2 times -3 is -6, plus 6 is another 0. I double checked because I was like, wait, I got another 0, which is absolutely fine. And then we keep that same row in the prettiest form that we had. Ooh, we're almost done. We're almost in reduced row form. We just have that 2 where a 1 should be. So we're going to take row 2 and divide it by 2. That's going to give us the final answer. So 0, 1, 0. Okay, what does x1 equal? It equals 2. What does x2 equal? 0. All right, or we can list it as a point. 2, 0. Yay, we got our first one done. Not really, because we've already done one of those. Okay, so I don't love 10 being the first 3 by something. So we're going to skip to 11 and I can show 10 after. It's just 10's kind of, or if, yeah, we'll see. 10's just like, it's not our normal form. I'll show you again. 10 has got x1 and 2's, but 3 equations and no x3's. So I'll tell you right now, it's either going to have no solution or many solutions. It's a weird one because you don't have 3 equations, 3 unknowns. So that one does end up being no solution. So you'll end up with a row of zeros and a number. Okay, so they're all, when they're off, they're all going to be either many solutions or no solutions. Okay, here's our first 3 by 3. So let's start by writing this out. So it's going to go 2, 1, negative 1, 2. 1, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. Okay, so there's our starting matrix. So we've talked about this before, but either way, we want to start with a 0 in here. Okay, so 0 here's where I always just start. So I could easily multiply this row by -2 and add, or I can multiply this one by -1 and add them. Either one will work. I just need it to have a 0 here. So let's do -1 times row 3. And then we're going to add it to row 2. And it will replace, where do I want it to replace when I get that 0 in that first row? In the middle, so row 2. So replace it on row 2. Okay, so let's do that. I'll do it over here. So -1 times this one plus this one is going to give me a 0. And we're in the middle, so 0 here. Then -1 times this one plus 3 is going to give me 2. -1 times the -1 plus the 2 is going to give me 1. -1 times the 2 is -2 plus 1 is a -1. Okay, everything else stays the same. And you'll find that's kind of how it rolls, depending on, some people try to do more steps than one, but really this is already timesing and adding in one step and replacing. Don't try to do too much more at one time. All right, great. I have a 0. Yay. And now where do I want to go next? This one. I would like this one to be a 0. Well, I can't times this by a number to get this a 0. This doesn't work. So if this was a -2, I could add it here and that would become a 0. Okay, so that's my goal. -2 times row 3 plus row 1, and I'm going to replace it on row 3 because I want the 0 under the 0. So I'm going in order. 0, 0, 0. Triangle, little triangle. So that's going to leave me with, okay, -2, where am I multiplying? By -3. I wish you could see my finger on it. I have to keep changing. I keep putting my finger right here and like you can't see that. So -2 plus 2 is going to give me a 0, which is what I wanted right here. And then -2 times 1 plus the 1 is a -1. Okay, -2 times 1 again is -2 minus 1 more is -3. And then -2 times 2, -2 times 2 is -4 plus 2 is -2. And then everything else stayed the same. Okay, so where do we have to go next? We have to go to this 0 using these 2 rows because I need those to stay and add to 0, right? When I add these 2 together, this one stays 0. If you used this one and you added these rows together, this will become a number again and you just lost a zero. No, 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 no. We do not want to go backward. You will when you start these. It's kind of a puzzle, but I need to go here first. So you just have to deal with whatever numbers you have to multiply. So I can multiply this one by 2, and then these would add to 0. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take 2 times row 3, and I'm going to add it to row 2 and replace it on row 3. Okay, do that. So row 2 times, so 0 times 0 is 0 plus 0, so we're good. So then we do the negative, or excuse me, positive 2 times this one, so we get another 0. Then we do 2 times negative 3 is negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. Okay, and then the last one, negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, minus 1 more is another negative 5. Okay, the rest stays the same. 0, 2, 1, negative 1, 2, 1, negative 1, 2. All right, and I could make that last row is done. We can make it ones by dividing by 5 now, or you could do it at the end, either way. We might have to use that row to help us with another 0, so let's make it a 1. So we're going to take row 3 and divide it by negative 5, and we're going to ignore this problem. If I can erase it or I can rewrite it somewhere else if we need it. So then we're going to have, now we're going to be at 2, 1, negative 1, 2, 0, 2, 1, negative 1, 0, 0, divided by negative 5 is a 1, divided by negative 5 is a 1. Yay! Oh my goodness, we could actually find the answer right now if we wanted, because x3 equals, you could write back the equations and work backward and actually find the solution from here. But we want to do the full reduced row echelon forms. Okay, so we want our next round of zeros to go this way. So if we want a 0 here, we have to add these two together in order for that 0 to happen there. So we can take and times the top row, so row 1 by 2. Oops. So, negative 2 times row 1, and then add that to row 2 and replace that back to row 1. All right, so I need to start writing smaller. Or I'm just going to go like this. Add a page, then we're good. Okay, so then I'm going to write that down here. So we're going to go negative 2 times row 1. So negative 2 times 2, I can't think right now. Negative 4 plus 0 is negative 4. So this is going to become negative 4. Then the next one will become 0 because the 2 plus the negative 2. And then the next row is going to become 3 because you have negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2 plus the 1 is 3. The last one, negative 2 times this one's negative 4 minus 1 more is negative 5. Oh, shoot. Everything else stays the same. We did not lose a 0. We still have our 3 zeros, which is great. Okay. Now we have that 0 there. Now, when we go to get this next 0 here, so remember we go this way, this way, this way. It's very specific. To get this 0 here, I have to use these two formulas. Why? Because I don't want this to become a number again. If you use these two, then when we add, this would be a 0, but then this would be a number and that would be a number. Not good. So you have to use the rows with the 0 where the 0 is to keep the 0. So we are going to take, we got to use that one and that one. So negative 3 times row 3. And we're going to add that to row 1, and we're going to replace it on row 1. So we're still only changing row 1, and let's go ahead and do that. So -3 times row 3 is 0 plus the -4 is -4. 0 plus 0 is 0. This one becomes 0 because that was the whole point. Because -3 times 1, blah, 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 -3 times another one minus 5 more is -8. Okay, everything else stays the same. 0, 0, 1, 1. All right, then from here, I have one more 0. Where, right here, right? What two functions do you want to use to make a 0 here, but keep this 0? Because I'm only dealing with this row. This row is done. This row is done. Number, 0, 0 number. We good. Okay, so for this row right here, excuse me, for this row right here, I want to use this row right here, right? So that these stay a 0. So wherever you have a 0, you need to use the formula that has the 0 in the same spot to keep that 0. So we're going to use these two. And we need this to become a 0. So -1 times this plus this, and we should be good. So -1 -1 times row 3, or it could be times the other row, whatever, plus row 2, replace it on row 2. You could have wrote that a couple ways. At the same time, can we take row 1 and divide it by -4 so it becomes the 1? Sure, we can do that 2 steps at the same time because we're good. So let's start with our row operations. So we have negative plus times that is 0 plus 0 is 0. So this stays a 0. -1 times 0 plus 2 is 2. -1 times 1 plus 1 is 0. -1 times 1 is -1 minus 1 more is -2. Okay, so we're here. Bottom row still 0, 0, 1, 1. But we're going to divide the top row and 2. By -4 in the same step, just to kind of make it less writing. Last thing, I want this to be a 0, a 1, not a 0. Too many zeros and ones. So I'm going to divide row 2 by 2. So my final answer is 1, 0, 0, 2. Middle row 0, 1, 0, -1, 0, 0, 1, 1. All right, so what is x? X1 is 2, x2 is -1, and x3 is +1. Okay, we could write that as XYZ, X, Y, Z. It's an arbitrary point. You go X, Y, and then like in the air, like 3D. Sure, see. Oh my goodness, I know that one's hard. I know, I know. So I'm gonna actually pause and I'm gonna make a second half of this, just so you could try maybe a couple of these and then come back and watch the second video, second recording.